Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Speaking of podcasting, I did want to ask you about your own podcasts. And I want to ask you specifically if there are particular episodes that you're most proud of. Because I know that we all have, it's like saying I love one of my babies more. But I know, but...
You mean besides the time we had Jodi Krangle on our show?
Besides that time.
Okay. Okay. You see how I did that?
Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, we had Major Tom Schumann on our show, who wrote a book. He served in the Marines and was served in Afghanistan, and he had an interpreter that traveled with him that basically became part of the Marines. And he wrote this book, and it became his mission to bring him back, not to bring him, but to get this guy cleared to be able to become a U.S. citizen. And told the story. He was on, 2020 and ABC and all kinds of things, which was, it's nice to have a guy that has that sort of rep to be able to be on your show. But I really felt like that was one of the first times on Dealcasters where we were, it felt like real impact. There was people that were, typically, in this podcasting thing, most people, if they're going to say anything, it's probably not going to be something that's super nice. It's sort of like, they make a joke, or they kind of say something, or it's just general, hey, great show, or that kind of thing. But we got some feedback from that show that really you could tell people were impacted by that, and it kind of made us change a little bit of the direction of the show, kind of saying, well, this seems to resonate more with people. And I think those, there's been some favorite shows where we've just had laughs and it's just been fun, and then all of a sudden you look at the clock and you're like, it's well past an hour. I can't believe people are still hanging out for as long as this is. And if it wasn't fun, we wouldn't do it. And as soon as it stops being fun, that's when I'm going to stop. And but I think, back to the Tom Schumann episode, it was really a situation where it was a different type of show for us. Typically, we have entrepreneurs on who do something, and we want to inspire other entrepreneurs. But this was a different type of show. And that was like, well, if the audience is responding like this, maybe we, don't do a hard left here, but maybe we should be, kind of catering to that, because that seems to resonate more. And so I think it's key for people, especially podcasters, to always be looking at your audience and always be just not doing the same thing, because this is my show, and now I'm like at episode 185 and 186, and are these really resonating for you? You don't have to shift like too much, but keeping a focus on that avatar, if you will, your key audience, your key listener, and really trying to continue to serve them well.
So for Dealcasters, your audience is entrepreneurs specifically?
Yeah. I mean, we started on Amazon, and we didn't know, we knew that we were going to repurpose the interviews to an audio podcast. And, but we kind of thought, well, these are just a bunch of people shopping on Amazon for tech. And most of the time when we're talking to, people about tech, they're writing a book, or they're creating a website, or they're doing something. They're an entrepreneur. They're another podcaster. And so, that usually was, who we want to cater to. So usually the audience was somebody who is big in live streaming, or, that type of thing is usually just that particular person. But I think every once in a while, when you can weave in just a heartwarming kind of thing, and this guy was an author who wrote a book, and so we kind of kept it in that lane, and we're able to say, okay, let's talk about the process of writing your book. And you weren't an author before this. How did you, so it still catered to the entrepreneur, but still brought in that sort of heartwarming, patriotic thing as well.
Yeah, I love it. It's really an interesting, not really a pivot, but like a different aspect of what you were doing before.
Yeah, a lot like you. We don't just wing it. And I think, people really need to understand, like, they see you and your show and they think, wow, she just like fires up the camera and, no, but we had,
away we go.
no, we had a pre-conversation, and you are very meticulous about, and I mean this in the best of ways. And I think there are people that need to understand, like, if you want to take this seriously, you have to, be excellent. And that means, have a pre-call and say, I want my guest to understand this is what this is for. This is what I would love to be able to have you talk about so it serves my audience. And I love that because that allows me to show up here and we're both very comfortable. We know exactly what to expect. You're not going to throw me some question that I'm just going to go, I know what to expect, and I'm comfortable.
This isn't a gotcha.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to get you here.
Yeah, and you're going to get exactly what you feel your audience wants to get from me.
Sure. Yeah. It changes all the time. I think, like you were saying with your with that fellow that you were talking about that was sort of new for you. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've kind of been doing is in the beginning, I was focusing more on the audio branding, specifically to do with commercials and marketing and branding and advertising and that kind of thing. And every once in a while, I'll have an episode where I'll bring on someone who talks about sound in healthcare, or reaching your inner creativity with sound, or relaxing yourself with sound. I've done a time or two about binaural beats and ASMR, and it's funny because those episodes end up being pretty popular. And I wonder, okay, well, maybe I'm not catering to everyone who's in the advertising, marketing, and branding space.
Right.
We're all human beings. We all have things that we want to learn about and things that we're interested in, and sound is definitely one of the things that I'm interested in and like to spread the good word about. Right. So, it's amazing how many different places that touches us.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Venn diagrams are, for something like audio, there's a lot of overlaps there, like you're talking about, but I think the art of it that you're doing is you're still catering it properly. It's still, first and foremost, it's coming through your voice. And so even if someone is talking about the ASMR thing, or talking about, how hospital beeps are driving people insane or whatever, even though there's other people talking about it, you are talking about it. And so your audience is picking up what you're putting down, and that there's something to be said. You're not copying somebody else. You are putting your own spin on it. And I think a lot of times people will say, well, geez, I can't do a podcast. My topic's taken. They've already done this. I watched this podcast or listened to this podcast on this, that, and the others. It's like, listen, you're not going to do the same podcast as somebody else. It may be the same topic, and you may be able to garner a completely different audience by doing that. So I think, for your podcast, even though audio is a broad spectrum of topics to cover, there's a lot of people that are currently under your umbrella of audio branding that wouldn't be too tripped out if you just all of a sudden brought a new one-time topic, but related it to audio.
Sure. Yeah. And it's funny, but the audio branding people out there, the people that do that, I don't think they've really been spotlighted before. That's the really interesting thing about this. Yeah. Not on a podcast. I don't think so. So this is one of those things that I really like talking about because those people deserve that spotlight. And I think it's the same with you. I mean, when you're talking with someone, definitely you as the host, you're putting your spin on that kind of whatever you're doing, and Dealcasters and Jim with you, the two of you together, you have a very specific way of doing things and getting people to talk, which you're doing here very well.
I'm sorry, the host in me sometimes comes out.
It's okay. I get it. It actually works really well. We're doing good, doing just fine here.
We're all crossing the finish line together here, Jodi.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you're so right about the personality. I think that it really makes a big difference. And anyone who wants to start a podcast, you don't have to be the most, out there person to be able to do a podcast. I don't know about you, but I am a raging introvert.
Hey, some of the best podcasters are.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where you are having a conversation with someone, and that's just what you need to focus on. It's all about the conversation. And I mean, you do that really well with Dealcasters and with the podcasts that you're doing as well. And I've been really impressed with everything that you're doing with that, because it's just so much fun. Like, it just seems like you two and you're having so much fun, which I think
has to be. It absolutely has to be.
It's imperative,
It's listen, I spent years in the music business, and there's a reason why, because I just love music, and it's always been a part of my life, but it was the music business, and there became a point where it was not fun for me. And
I totally get
it
it.
Became a family. I had a family, and just became to the point where I was like, this is, I'm not going to move to New York or LA for this company. And so I'm going to start my own company and do something that I love. And it just so happened that podcasting allowed me to continue to help other people sound and look their best. And that is, that was a seamless transition. And my only regret is that I didn't do it earlier.
Actually, I want to ask you about that. So Cast Ahead, what do you think? Well, okay, again, this might be asking you to like out one of your children, but is there an episode that you've helped someone produce that isn't, you as the host that you're particularly proud of?
Well, the first one that comes to mind, I think pride is like, I wouldn't say I'm proud of it. I guess I'm proud of a lot of episodes. So yeah, I'm proud of it. I wouldn't say I'm most proud of it, but I'm going to single this one out just because it comes to mind.
Maybe it has the most impact.
Yeah. Well, the show I have various different clients, but this one in particular is a regional podcast that does, highlights nonprofits and small businesses in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Okay. In Amish country.
And I know how to pronounce that, by the way, Lancaster.
Yes.
I do furniture spots in that very area.
What's that?
I do furniture spots in that area.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Is it for Gardner's Mattress and More by chance?
No, it is not.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, that's okay. So
there are probably a few.
Yeah, that's true. There's probably more than one furniture spot. So Lancaster Connects is a podcast that's based out of Gardner's Mattress and More. So it's two mattress store owners that do a show out of the mattress store, but they don't talk about mattresses. What they do is they do spotlight on small businesses. Okay. And so, and it's a fun show, and these guys have these great people on, and they always give back to the community. They give money to all these people. This is what they use as their charity kind of thing. And so there are super fans of that show that show up week after week, and it's just a fun thing for me to produce that episode. Well, they approached episode 100, and their publicist contacted me and said, "What would you think for the 100th episode if we got Bret Michaels, the singer from Poison, to be on the show?" Wow. And I was like, "I'm sorry, who?" I'm like, so we've had these people like that help homeless people get off the streets. We have, all these, nonprofits, charities. And now all of a sudden we're going to have Bret Michaels. And they're like, well, Bret is doing a concert in Central Pennsylvania. He's from Central Pennsylvania. He has this cool. Party Gras tour or whatever. Yep. Of course, the lead singer of Poison, the 80s, big in the 80s, continues to do all kinds of stuff. And so I was like, well, I think that is a great idea. So let's go ahead and do that. Well, it's not as easy as having, Bret Michaels show up at 2:00 on a Tuesday, which is when we do a live show. And so we had to schedule it to where we could coordinate it and record it as opposed to going live. And then we would broadcast it live after the fact. And then we found out that he didn't want to do video. And I'm like, this is a guy that, you have to do video, right? And apparently he didn't feel confident enough in the connection wherever in the world he was on tour to be able to do that. And I think this kind of goes back to the premise of this show. I think a lot of people who do a video show that maybe don't think about audio would maybe not know what to do in that situation, or maybe not even do the show. But I was like, we'll take it. We will do the show and we'll figure out something to be able to do. If I can have Bret Michaels on this show, we're going to do it. And we did it. I had to route, he called in, I had to route him in through my mixer and kind of pull him in. And I was like spinning plates and doing all kinds of wild stuff here to just kind of get him in. But we got him in, and it was a fantastic interview. And then afterwards, I, pulled in video of him and imagery to kind of like just, so the video was secondary in this. The audio was the primary thing in that respect. And when he was done, he was so knocked out. During the phone call, he was like, listen, I'm going to give you, he gave them something like 18 backstage passes and VIP meet and greets for the store to be able to give out to their key customers and do all of those kind of things. And it was like, you just have to think about this kind of stuff from let's serve the audience. Let's serve these people. Let's not go, oh, he can't do video. That just sucks. And this isn't going to work. It's like, no, it worked. He didn't have to be on screen. We knew it was him. You could hear him, and he was clear and understood, and you could hear the energy in his voice. And at the end of the show, unbeknownst to us, he just said, listen, I'm giving you a bunch of tickets. Just give them to your people.
So nice of him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it worked out, even though the video wasn't there. And, that it sounds like that wasn't really a big problem.
No, not at all. I made a little magic and pulled in shots of him and just kind of made it look, somewhat appealing, without, like the AI version of him speaking of it or during it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it worked out. That does sound like quite the episode. Before we go here, because I didn't ask this at the very beginning, I want to ask you if you can tell me a story about an early memory of how sound moved you.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that music has always been a part of my life. I mean, when I grew up, some of my earliest memories are every time I would wake up, there would be music playing in my house. We had one of those big stereo systems that was like built into the furniture back in the day, with the vinyl player or whatever. My dad had this huge collection, and it would be, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, or Benny Goodman, or Glenn Miller, or, if I was lucky, it'd be John Coltrane or somebody like that, Charlie Parker. And my dad played the trumpet as well. And every once in a while he'd bust it out and he'd call it, getting his lip back in shape and,
that
playing a little bit. That
embouchure is important.
Yeah. And he would play the trumpet. And I remember I didn't really love the music at the time. But I just remember loving that my dad loved it. And I remember hearing the stereo down the hall. My big brothers both had records, and it would be like The Doors and Styx and Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. And I'd go into their rooms, and they'd be like, "Are they going to let me in?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." And they'd hand me the albums, and I'd like open them up, and so that's really, music is just in my DNA. It's just a part of everything. It's why I got in the music business, why I started playing bands. It's really why I do everything, and it's why it's a key component of my day. I have 3 rules during my day and one of them is to listen to music, because it is sometimes you can forget. Like you go through this entire day, you go to a conference or and it's just nothing but chatter and hospital beeps and things like that. And all of a sudden it's just like, you know what? I need to listen to something today. even if it's, whatever, classical or whatever it is that gets you going. It's really, it's an important part of my day.
Yeah, I totally get that. And so I'm going to go a little philosophical here with you and broaden that a little bit and ask you why you think sound is important.
I just feel as if you can't really have a silent podcast, right? I mean, I guess you could have...
No.
I guess you could have closed captioning the entire time, right? And of course, this isn't to, disparage someone who's hearing impaired or anything like that, but I think it really is woven into everything, even subliminally, right? I think, and that's what I love about podcasting, and sound is so important in podcasting. No one listens to an audio podcast because it sounds so good, right? They listen to an audio podcast because of what you're delivering to them. And no one is going to receive what you're delivering if they can't hear you clearly and understand you. And so that to me is why in podcasting, why audio is so important. It's not important to sound like Jodi Krangle. It's important to sound like you clearly and that you're understood. And like I said, there's no silent podcast. At least, maybe there will be after the show. We're going to break it right here on audio branding.
Outside of that, though, how does sound affect you, like in your daily life? Do you have you run across anything that particularly affected you outside of podcasting? I mean,
has sound affected me outside of?
Do you think it's influenced you in some way? When you walked in a store, when you were listening to an ad?
Yeah.
Are there instances that you think that's happened?
Well, I think I had mentioned earlier, I have this this thing where audio is basically, I'm maybe more affected by it than anyone. I'm the person that hears people chewing their food from across the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
I'm that person, even though I'm don't have great overall hearing because of the concerts that I was stupid enough to go and not use ear protection, in my younger, more dumb days. And so, but you walk into a store and it could be like a nice environment visually and you're even smelling some things, right? And you're being offered something to taste. But if the audio is just jarring or isn't right or something, like imagine walking into your favorite perfume store. It's got cologne, perfume, or whatever. But somebody, you ever hear it like when a CD or something is on, stuck and it goes, and it's like this really super annoying noise, right?
Oh, yeah.
If that was going on, you couldn't stay in the store. You could not stay in the store. It doesn't matter how great everything smells. You could not stay. It would drive people out. People would stand around and look around and look at the store clerks and they'd go, can you, what is that? Right? That's really how important audio is to me and how it affects me is that it will drive me to something but it will drive me away just as much.
It's really fascinating, that Interac, which is a way that you can use your cards to pay for things. It's like a direct deposit, direct debit kind of thing here in Canada. Mm-hmm. They just did a campaign where they had someone, Cesium Song actually, built them a soundscape that they play in stores or that people can play in their headphones while they're shopping that will make them more conscious of the money they're spending. So it's not stopping them from spending. It's not making them spend more. It's actually just making them more conscious of the spending that they're doing. And from what I could hear, it's just a really interesting modulation of different types of music that keeps you interested throughout the entire piece so that you're actually paying attention, which is really interesting.
Wow. So is it? Let me guess. It's AI driven, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So somebody's composed this music specifically for that, based on science.
Yep.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So instead of actually getting people to buy more, like the music you're hearing in a store, like in a brick and mortar store, people are actually tuning in from their phones or like listening on Spotify or whatever while they're shopping. And they actually measured how conscious people were of what they were spending.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just really fascinating. It influences us in so many ways that I don't even think we're conscious of.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that. 100%. They play music at sporting events. They play music, virtually everywhere you go. It's a component of everything. You just have to stop and listen to really be able to identify it. And now it's got me wondering if I'm getting music piped in to places I'm walking in. Why am I so hungry right now? Why do I want to have pancakes? It's like somebody put in the pancake mix, and I've got
There you go. Yeah, you never know. It just goes to show you that we really have to pay attention to this kind of stuff. Yeah,
absolutely.
So what are you, I don't know if you mentioned exactly like what you're working on right this moment that you can talk about. I don't know. Did we do that at the very, very beginning or?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
right now, my biggest kind of thing that I'm working on, including just, serving the clients that I have at Cast Ahead, is redoing my website. So I'm working with a company called Lead by Example, and we're putting together an actual website that doesn't represent my business from 3 years ago, that represents my business right now.
Good for you. Yeah.
So I finally got off my tail and did that. Here I am, the guy that tells everybody to invest in your own business and, really be serious about it. And yet I wasn't investing on someone else creating my website. And so that's really what I'm doing, is working together with Matthew Rhoda at Lead by Example and putting together a website that really represents my business, that we produce podcasts, who we produce it for, and how much. And so people can understand, okay, this is what this guy does. This is the guy that was on Jodi Krangle's podcast. So this is the guy that was on, whatever. This is
the guy that has his own award-winning podcast.
I don't know.
Yes,
I guess. Everybody's an award winner now. You can just go get a badge on LinkedIn and call yourself whatever. But
I guess so.
But that's really what I've been focused mostly on is serving my clients better. I'm always looking to improve the skills in live remote production, in audio and video production, and scaling it up. I've got a team of folks that work with me now, and it's really just focusing on making that business better and scaling it up.
Wonderful. Yeah. So how can people reach out to you?
You can get me at castahead.net, and that's the website that is currently being worked on to be made better, hopefully soon. And if you want to connect with me on any social media of your choice, I'm at chrisstone.contact.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Jodi. This has been a joy.
This was fantastic. Yeah. Thanks so much, Chris.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Likewise.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.